Go for it. Wow. Okay. Guys, welcome, Garden Revels. This is Earth Day. An amazing day, by the way. Does everyone know the history of Earth Day? This is the 51st year. It started way back in 1970. And the reason why I know that is because I used the Google this morning, and because I was curious on how that all came about. Interesting story about that, by the way. Way back in 1970, there is a film about Earth Day, just a short little film made. And if you go to the Earth Day website, you'll see this. It's very, very touching, very, very moving. And I have to share this with you because such an interesting story. But there was a congressman from Wisconsin that was really concerned about the environment way back in 1970. And in this short film, what they did is used his speeches to Congress about the environment and about the interaction of plants and animals and us and how it affects the earth. And it is just so forward thinking way back in 1970. And all his words apply so well today in 2021. So it's really kind of a moving, touching thing. So had to preface that before we even start talking about amazing, crazy plants that that I love to talk about today. And you know, Earth Day does. In his message, by the way, it's really a movement from the ground up. It's a little bit from all of us, and so in that way, I think we can make a huge difference. So let's start out with what we call our smallest hanging basket. This is modeled modeled from our world's largest hanging basket. And having the world's largest hanging basket here at the garden corner, right here in Tualatin, is kind of a humbling experience. Let me tell you, I just had it's humbling because I think, of course, it's the most amazing, crazy thing we've done here, but it's humbling because just the other day I had someone who's lived here in Tualatin 25 years and has never realized we were here. Not only that, he lived like a couple of blocks away. So just had to share that story. Let's talk about some plants. I want to talk about some plants that attract birds, bees, butterflies. I want to talk about plants that attract humans, and some of my favorite go-to plants and I'll show you a few uses, by the way, for those plants. Just some things that I think you should know about. So how shall we start? Should I just start show and tell type of plants? Like, take a look at this. This is just amazing. This is what we call a wild petunia. It's ruella is the botanical name. Let me see if I can get that in the camera just right there. Okay, ruella, take a look. If you were a bee, a honeybee, if you were a hummingbird, this is what you would go after. It's just an amazing, crazy plant that is great in containers and or naturally in the ground. But it's called a wild petunia. I just had to show that off. That striking red color, the tubular bloom, just perfect for what we are looking for to attract birds and butterflies. And if you are, so I'm just gonna go through some plants, right? One at a time. Bright, beautiful, tough. This here is an Erysium. I am not sure how the Erysiums, this is called a wallflower. And there's been some amazing breeding along the way, by the way. Gardening now is so different from even just 5 years ago. There's some new varieties, new, better, longer lasting blooms, different types of foliage, and there's some great breeding work going on in the plant world. I think it's fantastic. It's exciting. So if you are gardening or beginning gardening, this is the most amazing time in the history of mankind. I got to tell you some big words. Anyway, I never knew why people, shy people, are called wallflowers. So, because this Erysium is just so bold and amazing. This one is called Fragrant Star, by the way. A tad bit fragrant, but just that just nice big bold, and then the yellow foliage stands out. If you have some sunshine and you want a spot for a dependable perennial that comes back every year dependably at this time of year, you can celebrate Earth Day just by planting a single Erysium. So Fragrant Star is this one. I think it's amazing. Holler, of course, if you have questions in your garden. Along that line of yellow and green, and I'm a big fan of yellow and green, is look at this. This is Iris Polida right here. This is a type of Japanese iris. You can see it's just beginning to bloom. It blooms that vibrant violet color. The strange thing on irises is their short bloom season. So they come in like, hey, I'm here, and then they disappear right when you want. Oh, sorry, that was I thought that was a question. Let me turn this off for a second here. I thought that was a question.
We do have 2 questions that came in if you do want to take a minute to answer questions.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, these are sort of specific questions, but we have a question about bishop's weed. They say that it's taking over their flower bed. Do you have any recommendations for getting rid of it?
Yeah, the best way, hacking, cut hacking. You are in control, and it's always a little, sometimes it's just brute force. So hacking, cutting, probably the best way to do that. So.
Okay. And then we have another question. This one's about blueberries. They have a blueberry plant that blooms and they get a few berries. How can they nurture the plant to grow and produce more berries? They planted it 3 years ago.
They planted it 3 years ago. Blueberries tend to overproduce, but we're not getting enough blueberries on your side. So 2 things to take a look at is, one is amount of sunshine. So blueberries love hot, intense sunshine. So west side is really the best, west or south side. Less sunshine you get, the less blueberries you get. So first, take a look at sunshine. Second thing to look at is when it's blooming, is that you don't let that plant dry out. So you notice on those blueberry fields, they put that sawdust around the roots. That's to keep in moisture. So because the blooms turn into the blueberries, anytime it dries out, the blooms are the first to suffer. So you'll get that buckshot blueberry. So look at the sunshine and then watch the watering after it blooms.
Great, thank you. Those are the only 2 questions we have so far.
So far, good questions, by the way. Keep at it. Iris pallida, by the way. So this is, and so what I was going to say about this, the iris bloom is short-lived, beautiful violet color, but I wouldn't get this or plant this because of the bloom, but because of the foliage. So look at that. It's just so striking. So if you have morning sunshine or afternoon sunshine or a wet, soggy area that you just haven't fixed, this would be a great one to put in. So Iris pallida. I'm going to just jump here and there. I've got a whole mixture of plants. And so I'm going to jump all over all different types of plants, unusual, exotic, some some hardworking ones. By just, so here and there, hang with me because I'll show you in the end how to put some things together. Take a look at this guy. If you like exotic, that is just, if you like exotic, this one is, it's just an abutilon. They call it a flowering maple. What makes this one famous are these blooms. So strangely enough, hummingbirds love this. It doesn't have to be a red color. It can be a peach mango color too. But this variegated foliage and the peach blooms on there, and this will bloom constantly. It's a crazy bloomer. So if you love hummingbirds, love bees, honeybees, this is a great one to have. You can plant it singularly in a container. And I always say that this is one where your neighbors will come over and ask, what is that plant you have in that container? So it's not hardy for the season. I'm not hardy for the area, but great for the season as a planted container. So, and the neat thing about the butilons is they come in all colors, all shapes and sizes. So let's see here. I feel like I'm talking to myself, which I am, by the way. So it's just unnerving a bit. Take a look at this guy right here. If you want something well-behaved, 2 feet, and blooms, you're looking for that shrub that blooms unusual. This too has that violet color. So violet and this gorgeous yellow-green leaf is very striking. This is a type of Hebe. It's spelled H-E-B-E. So a lot of people just say Hebe, but it's Hebe. And this one is called Pinocchio. What makes it famous is it's short. It's short and stout. And then it has, and Hebes, this is the wonderful thing about Hebes, by the way. Humans love to know exactly when things come into bloom, right? We feel like we want some sort of control. And Hebes are the ones for us because I say it blooms whenever it feels like it. Technically, it's spring into summer and then oftentimes in the fall. So sometimes it will wait until the fall to bloom. Sometimes it will be the first thing in the spring to bloom, but it's a gorgeous spike of bloom. So keep an eye out for that. It's type of Hebe. This one is called Pinocchio. So for us folks who love control of the world, that's a good therapy plant for us. Now, let's talk about some fragrance and let's talk about some butterflies. So this guy right here, this is Heliotrope. So that is it's so fragrant, it's making my nose run. This one is very, very fragrant. It smells like, some folks will say licorice, some folks will say vanilla, but it has a very distinct smell and just, especially as it starts to warm up, as it starts to, in the summertime. And now you'll see this really, it's almost a blackish type bloom, but it has a strong, it opens up to a violet color. And then that violet turns into more of the bluish purple, and then it turns into a white. And so it changes through the season. If you're at a stage where it's white, you just take these and you pluck those blooms, pluck them right off, and you'll have that rebloom and rebloom all through the season. So heliotrope. The reason why I say butterflies is because it's that flat bloom. Butterflies love flat blooms, and you'll see they'll come flitting right onto those blooms from bloom to bloom. So great Earth Day celebration plant. So heliotrope, that one's called Fragrant Delight. Let's see. if
We've
you're
got another
feeling,
question for you, John. Sorry to
yes,
interrupt.
nope.
This person is wondering, they have a dogwood tree that didn't fully bloom. And they're wondering if it has anything to do with this year's ice storm.
Generally not. It probably won't be because of that. Well, let me see now. Hold on. When it sets bud, no, it wouldn't be. It wouldn't be because of the ice storm. So, dogwoods, that's cornice, and usually the most. It's a dogwood tree, so most often, most likely, it's Cornus florida, which is the showiest of all the dogwoods. It's the spring flowering dogwoods. Those, just keep in mind, they suffer from a lot of different diseases that happen to them. I want to say midlife crisis. So, so it might be an anthracnose. There might be a couple of different diseases that I highly suspect it might be a disease of their dogwood. So the best I can tell you is text me or email me a photo of your leaf of your full tree, and then of a leaf or a bloom close up, and I can help diagnose that. By the way, and speaking of which, by the way, if you have issues in the garden, even what's the name of this plant? I have an app. Yep, I have an app. It's download it to your phone, the Garden Corner, and on it is a where you take a picture and you can and it gets sent to real people. We identify your plant and it might identify your problem. So that might be a useful tool for you, is getting our app. If you have to get rid of your dogwood and you love dogwood trees, I would highly suggest, I highly recommend a Cornus, instead of a Cornus florida, do the Cornus cusa. And they're breeding that to have that showy bloom, like the Cornus florida, except later on. And it totally misses all of the diseases that the Cornus florida gets. So that's my answer to that. Any other questions?
That's it for now. Great. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay. On with the show, shall we say? Now, if you have that tropical blood in you, you love the hot sun, you love the summer, you might even have, some tropical plants in your garden. This reminds me of hot tropics. This is a type of canna. Keep an eye out for all of the Cannas, by the way. These are the guys with the big, bold leaf on them. They can get up to, I want to say, waist high. They're really coming along with a lot of varieties of vibrant bloom color with different types of foliage. This one here, as summer goes on, turns into a really deep, dark burgundy. So another one for any flowering is going to be about honeybees. It's going to be about hummingbirds. Yeah, so the cannas are a fun one. I use this a lot as centerpieces in containers. So do this big bold foliage. Use this big bold foliage with something smaller or something lighter, and you'll get a nice mixture. So keep an eye out for all of the cannas, not only for the foliage, but also for the vibrant blooms. This comes in striking oranges and really, really strong hot yellows. So a fun one for the summer months in the container to plant. And speaking of which, this guy, this one I really enjoy, just because that fine foliage. It has the red, I want to say the red accents to it, and it's almost a chartreusey green coloring on that. This is Sorberia sem, and the neat thing about this one is just one is the foliage, of course, And that's what all this is about. Birds love, little tiny birds, hummingbirds we've seen land on these and just rest. They just rest. And it's a great container plant. We use this a lot as well, just because that fine foliage. But an interesting thing, if you are a cold weather person and you're out there in the winter time and it's gray and brown, this guy is one. This will lose its leaves in the in the fall, but in the spring, it's like the first sign of hope. It's the first plant to just boldly throw out the leaves. And it's like just after a snowstorm or an ice storm, you'll see these. You go, oh, thank goodness spring is coming. So Sorberia is the name on this guy. And all of these plants, by the way, all of these plants, you can, if you're interested in, say, purchasing them, this is not why we're here, but if you're interested in purchasing, we do have a web store. So you can click to buy. It's on thegardencorner.com and scroll down. We arrange in the nursery, by the way, all plants by foliage color. So just go to the color of that. That would be in the yellows. Go down to Sorberia, click to buy, and we can send the plant right to you. I brought this guy because Pacific Northwest is home of the most amazing Japanese maples. People from all over the country, believe it or not, nurseries from all over the country come to Oregon just to purchase Japanese maples back to their state. So, believe it or not, traveling through the United States, I've decided we are Mecca for gardening. So, so I have to bring a Japanese maple. Now, some folks, when they think of Japanese maple, they think of the weeping lace leaf maples. So I brought this one over because this is an upright type of Japanese maple. And the neat thing about it, it's cute and short. This is called the Rhode Island Red. So, and if you think that this is red, wait till the fall. It's a bright red. So, and because it's Earth Day, it doesn't have to be complicated. It could be, believe it or not, taking a Japanese maple, like a small miniature, like Rhode Island Red, and planting it in a hanging basket. So something simple like that, and just let that grow year after year, and it'll just fill in beautifully. And yes, you can moss it on top so you get that red or the burgundy and the green on it. So just a neat look. And what I say, it's your gardening, your 5 minutes of gardening every day keeps you mentally sharp and adjusted. So for folks who want a faster move in the garden, things are too slow in the garden, I would suggest something like this. Now, this here is an osteospermum. And why I brought this up is because these have an interesting little tidbit about them. Osteospermum, they have been bred quite, we have a wide array of colors, oranges, yellows. This is kind of a red violet there. I just think that's a neat color on that. Easy to grow in containers. Why I brought this one up is because this one closes up at night and then will stay closed until some sunshine hits it, and then it just starts to open up like it's waking up. So it goes to sleep and then wakes up in the morning just like us. Of course, it's a great butterfly, a great bee attractor as well. So osteospermum, great in your containers. I'm gonna bring these two together just to show that off. Something like that. It's a great mixture. I can't ever get these camera angles. Look at that. Something like that in your container would be just showy, or in your garden. So
We have a couple more questions.
yes, yes.
Okay, this person is asking about canna lilies. Do you have to dig them up to have them come back, or can you leave them in the ground over winter?
On the cannas.
Yes. Cann.
Oh yeah, cannas. Because there's a canna and there's a calla. Cannas you can leave in the ground. Now, right now we've been leaving them in the ground unprotected. They just die back to the ground. They leave kind of a puddle of mush that you can clean up. It used to be where you'd take some mulch and just mulch it over. So if you wanted to be 100% sure, yes, you can put some mulch over, because we just never know what the winter is. Generally, 99.5% of the cannas winter over easily. So if you want to be 100% sure, put some mulch over the top. You do not have to dig those up. So,
Great, thank you. And then we have another question.
uh-huh.
This person says that their tulips and daffodils were very dried out this year and that they put them in pots. Would it be better to put them in the ground?
Put them in the ground? Would it be better to
Yeah.
put them in the ground? Okay.
Yeah, versus pots.
That's a great question. And it's a great one because for folks who have hanging baskets or containers, now we do all of the hanging baskets through Tualatin, of course, but we do all the hanging baskets throughout the entire Portland metro area. So Lake Oswego, Beaverton, Portland, all parts of Portland, and we go all the way down to Myrtle Creek, Roseburg. So we've got baskets all over. We maintain and care for baskets. So we have trucks that go out every night watering and fertilizing, but I don't keep the secret to ourselves. In our receipt, we send all the actual steps we use for hanging baskets and containers. I'm getting to your question. So if you follow those exact steps, you'll get those exact same results. Tulips and daffodils. So that question that it dried out is the same kind of like with the blueberries, is that if it dries out any time, that bloom is the first to suffer. So, and it's also why I talked about hanging baskets, because about the watering in containers, that's what happened. It's just, if it dries out, the blooms suffer, the show is over quicker. And to answer your questions direct, if you're not a very good water, and it is this is a question you ask yourself in front of your mirror. Are you a good water? Are you dependable? And if you say, no, I'm not dependable, that's okay. Because then, yes, move those tulips, move those daffodils into the ground. Mother Nature will do a better job there than in containers. But there are tricks. If you say you aren't a very good watering, there are tricks. We have tricks all through this nursery that turn on automatically and turn off automatically. So there are ways to get around that. But the watering in containers, if you get that right, you will be 95% the way home for having an amazing container hanging basket, and for a long time too. So
Great, thank you. We have one more question.
yes.
This one is about squirrels. So this person says that they have a problem with squirrels eating their blooms. Should they stick with foliage and shrubs, or are there any plants that bloom that squirrels would not be interested in?
Very, very interesting question. Squirrels, I find that interesting because it's generally not in the squirrels' repertoire of activities is to eat blooms. My first instinct is I'm suspicious that it's the actual squirrels. Squirrels like to, of course, they take things and bury, and they definitely dig up. So they'll, in the way they bury, they find soft ground, dig it up, bury it, and then run away and supposedly remember that they buried it there. I highly suspect it might be something else besides the squirrels. And by the way, I'm a big proponent, and I'm sure you are as well, that uh, any wildlife, I love all kinds of wildlife in the garden. I love watching deer come through the nursery. We have some road construction now, so we don't have it this year, but the deer eat our plants. And for a nursery, we think, oh my gosh, we've got to do something. I just love the deer. So what we found out is there are certain remedies for that, that they'll just quietly pass through us and then walk over to the neighbors and eat theirs. So the squirrels, so I definitely like to keep the squirrels there. Just as long as you figure out how to get around their digging. So to answer your question, I highly suspect it's something else, and I wouldn't garden garden in preparation against the squirrel. I would think that it might be something else. Here's a weird thing: rats, mice, and we have them in the greenhouses where we grow everything, and they definitely eat blooms. High up might be something else. They might maybe break the blooms. They generally tend not to eat them, but perhaps your squirrels are a different breed altogether, and lots that I don't know about this world. But I would plant comfortably, and maybe even try our deer spray on that. It makes blooms taste bad. So that's my answer to that. I don't know if that's helpful.
Great, thank you.
Uh-huh. Let's see. Oh, let's just go straight into let's go into some vines, shall we? Some things that you can do with vines, some amazing things. Oh, look at this guy. Jeez. Would you believe this vine is evergreen? So it keeps that leaf all year round, and it has kind of that unusual oak leaf on that. Take a look. So, and of course, it has all kinds of blooms. Imagine being a bee, and it's cold. It's been a long winter. They're just waiting for something to bloom so they can get the pollen and the nectar to keep the hive going. And this comes into bloom. Such a joyous daybreak, should I say, from the long suffering night of winter, to be poetic. This is clematis avalanche. So unusual type because that's evergreen, loves the morning sun, loves the afternoon shade. This one can take more sun, but it's definitely a spring bloomer, and just so foliferous this is. Take a look at how many leaves are on there. I just find that totally uplifting. Now, you notice that this is growing on hoops, or oftentimes you think if you have a vine, you'll have to trellis it somehow. It is okay to take a vine, remove this, and put it in your hanging basket. So you would have an evergreen vine that trails down and then blooms for you every year. So just an option. You can use it as a ground cover if you like. Let it grow on there and bloom as a ground cover. So other things that you can do with a vine. So instead of just vining it, but vining is fine too. So anyway, I just had to show you that. I find it striking. So, and speaking of which, since we're on vines, and if you love the evergreens, and you want something now that blooms springtime, and for us lowly humans, we think, is there anything that can bloom a little bit longer? And my answer now is yes, there are things that can bloom all summer long. There's some trade-offs. Life, there's always trade-offs. Take a look at this. This is a new variety of mandevilla. What is this one called? I forgot the variety's name on this. Recyclable material. What does it say? Sun parasol apricot. So I just love that. Well, it's a great name for that, apricot coloring on that mandevilla. The neat thing about mandevillas, also great in containers too, just like the other one, is that glossy green leaf on there. It's a constant bloomer, so it will bloom constantly through the summer. So it especially loves the heat of summer. So, and sometimes what folks will do is they'll enjoy their mandevilla outside all through the summer months, and then in the fall bring them inside and use it as a house plant. It won't bloom for you. There's not enough sunshine in the house, and it will lose some of the leaves just because it gets kind of grouchy, but it winters over nicely and bring it back out the next season after May 5. Generally in Oregon, May 5th is our last frost date. So 99.9% chance that it won't frost after that. I'm going to throw in some unusuals, some things to watch out for. Pacific Northwest is, of course, famous for all of our evergreens. Take a look at this weird creature. Now, I brought this. Birds love to hide in this. It's an unusual guy because it has those long, stringy foliage there. It almost looks like a grass, but it is a type of conifer. It's a type of thuya. This is Thuya plicata. It's called whipcord. It just gets more unusual as the years go down. Trails heavily. If you love a conversation piece plant, if you're a terrible gardener and you feel like you kill things all the time, plant one of these in your container, and you will automatically graduate to advanced gardening in the eyes of the gardening world. One, it's really easy to grow. Two, it's unusual. Three, it's a great conversation piece plant. So, oh yeah, that's my whipcord out there. And just a fun one. Great in containers. And speaking of conifers, I want something hardworking. Actually, no, I'm going to switch. Well, let's do something hardworking. You might have seen it before. I brought this out because this is one of the first plants that I ever grew in my life. So I took cuttings like this, little cuttings, and we'd sit in front of the TV and just bundle these cuttings, and later on we would stick them, and it's put plastic mat in front of the on the carpet. This is blue. This is a juniperus. It's a type of juniper, and it's Juniperus squamata, blue star. And the reason why I brought this out, of course, it's sentimental. Yes, in gardening, everything is sentimental. But I brought it out because this is such a hard worker. And that striking blue-gray color on this does this in the darkest days of winter and in the brightest, hottest days of summer. It stays this wonderful color. And some people are scared of, when you say juniper, that it's going to go crazy and rampant. This is a much more well-behaved juniper. So it stays as a smallish round ball and beautiful in containers. And if you love that blue-gray color, watch this. Watch this. Watch this. Are you ready? Take a look at this. This right here, this guy, this is Senecio angel wings. Now, this is a new variety. It came out of, I think, the Netherlands. The Netherlands, that's where my folks are from. And this one when you walk past it, you automatically want to pet it. So this is definitely a good one for humans. Of course, any plant takes some of the carbon out of the air, changes it to oxygen and water. Correct? That's photosynthesis. Um, the So this one just loved to pet. It's that striking whitish, icy. It's just a whitish, bluish coloring on it. And as the season progresses, this gets larger and even showier. So this is it's called Senescio angel wings. And when you put in that, you put it together with the blue and maybe even just like a blue bloom. I might have something here. Let's take a look. Something like this. And you get quite a mixture of things in there in your container. So imagine that. So just a fun one, just an idea. Senescio angel wings. And this is Juniperus squamata blue star. So how are you holding up? Holler if you have any questions. We can keep talking. I did bring out some surprises here. This guy right here. Petunias. Now, these aren't just your grandfather's or grandmother's petunias. These are very special types. What makes this one different is that these are supertunias, meaning they trail heavily. I mean heavily, like 4 feet heavily. So great in a hanging basket. They bloom constantly. So they bloom constantly throughout the entire summer and into the fall. Some long-term gardeners remember the petunia fingers. Remember when we used to have to deadhead these blooms and take them off, and then we'd end up with petunia fingers? These, no more deadheading. They automatically pull back when they've finished, and the new ones come right and I call it covering the dead. So you'll get this showy showcase of blooms. So now this one is in particular high demand. So we bring it in from our greenhouses, and it's almost automatically gone. This one is called Petunia Night Sky. Doesn't that look like a night sky? Just amazing. So if you are wanting colors in your hanging basket, and you want them all summer long. And by the way, if you have issues with petunias, there's a little caterpillar that late summer you get the petunias that will attack your petunias and eat all of your blooms. I go over that in the instructions on hanging baskets. It's an easy remedy. It's an earth-friendly and human-friendly and animal-friendly spray, and it's very effective just for the budworm. Now, I told you about that Petunia Night Sky. I told you about amazing gardening. As if the blue night sky wasn't enough, take a look at this one. This is called Pink Sky. Gosh, I can never get the orientation right. Pink Sky. So it's just like, that was great. Well, here it is in the pink color. So, and it is also a supertunia. So trails heavily, blooms constantly. So, of course, everything I say, for coloring after that seems a little bit more dull, but I do have to bring this one up. So if you love hummingbirds, this one is a hummingbird magnet. I mean, crazy magnet. This is a type of Kupfia, and this one is called honeybells. There's a lot of members in the Kupfia family, and it's been bred a lot because hummingbirds love it so much. So hold that still there for you. Take a look at that bloom. So it will be constantly constant. Now, we brought in some large containers of Cupia and they were blooming like crazy. And I meant it just as a showpiece for these little guys. So you see how it grows, and then you can buy the little ones. Well, I have been bringing in large ones of these constantly because they keep selling. So folks want those now for their hummingbirds. But buy the little ones, and they grow so quickly. So Cupia honeybells, not only that, this one here, I don't have enough blooms to show you on that, but this one's called Blackberry Sparkler. So you can kind of see that. It kind of looks like a blackberry sparkler. It's a good name for it, but it's also a Cupia. There's ones in hot orange or deep dark oranges. They look like a cigar burning. So oftentimes called the cigar plant. But the Cupias for hummingbirds, definitely a go-to. A
We have
few
another
more.
question, John.
Yes. Yes.
So this person is asking if you have any recommendations for good soils for flowers, specifically any brands or anything like that.
Boy, this is going to be one of the toughest questions because toughest questions. Soil and potting soil for containers generally is three ingredients. It's peat, it's perlite, and it's bark. And the inside scoop on soils is that stores demand the price point first. So a big store would say, I need a bag of soil for $4.99, $6.99, whatever the price point is. And what the soil producers do is they change the ingredients, those three ingredients, to bring that price down. And I don't like that. I just find that unsettling um, because it's about growing plants, but not growing plants just for that week when you plant it, but through the whole spring season, through the whole summer season, into the fall, even throughout the year. So the second reason why that's difficult for me to answer is because I didn't like what I saw out there, and so we created our own mixture. So I said, hey, what will allow roots to grow easily, hold water in heavily, and last the longest time with air and water pockets. And so we have our very own potting soil. It's called Container Power. I sell a lot of it. We bag it right here at the garden corner. And so we're in control of those ingredients. And I know exactly what goes in it. Well, hold on a second. I'll grab you a scoop of it. This is our scoop of our Container Power. Really easy for roots to grow in, holds that water in nicely. So if I had to answer your question as honestly as I could, realizing that I have a bias, an ingrained bias, I would say it's our Container Power. The garden corner located in Tualatin. So that's the answer to my question. Answer to the question.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions, by the way, because we are near our time?
Yeah, we are getting pretty close. So if anybody has any other questions for John, please type them in now so that we can get them answered before we finish up here at 11. So you can use the chat function or the Q&A function. Either one works. It looks like we might have a question from Judy. Are you able to type that, Judy, or would you like me to allow you to talk? I'll let Judy talk. Judy, are you able to ask your question? Let's see. Okay, well, we
I have
did
a
get a couple
question
of
for
other
you.
questions. Oh,
Okay.
wait, I think I heard Judy. Go ahead,
Yes,
Judy.
I was wondering what you would recommend for a shrub to plant for a privacy screen in a corner of a yard where a tree had fallen down and it's now bare. We want something that will get partial sun and partial shade, and that's about 8 or 10 feet tall, but not too wide.
Do you have any other demands?
No, none.
Okay. Well, I can tell you when we lose things, when we lose a tree, when we lose that, unfortunately, I say we have to give ourselves some time to get to the new world, because anything we plant is going to be too small, too slow, too everything. Um, so when I heard your issue, putting myself in your shoes, is we kind of want it fast. A shrub at 8 or 10 feet tall takes a while. And there are definitely shrubs that can do that, but it just takes 10 years, 12 years on average, even buying them large. So I probably push you more to the small trees, believe it or not. Like I would definitely look at a European hornbeam. That is a great blocking tree that you can plant right on the property line, so it tends not to disturb, take up too much room on your side or the neighbor side. A European hornbeam, and they're very columnar, and they are deciduous, meaning they lose their leaf, but the branching can get so thick that you would really have to concentrate to see through it as it grows. And then also I would take a look at, you mentioned sun and shade, part sun, part shade. So what part of the day is sunshine? Is it morning sun or afternoon sun? And what part of it is it shade? Because that can make a difference too. If it's heavily toward the shady side, it's going to be a little bit different results. More toward the sun, you want a different selection of plants. Either way, I look at the European hornbeam, probably rank that. Now, Gabera daisies. Um, Gabera daisies, you just can't beat those for the beauty, right? It's just so striking, so happy. Foliage is so lush. Um, they're a great gift if you're going over to someone's house. Stop in. You know, they're just a nice little. I mean, a little pot. So it's a great gift to give when you go into someone's house. My downside on that is that the blooms are, they'll rebloom and rebloom, but during the heat of the season, they tend to shut down. And sometimes, if you not a very good watering, it really goes downhill quickly. I want to show you something that might interest you. So you get the beauty of the gaberas, but you get the hardiness for the garden, and it's Gabera garvinia. This is a garden Gabera, and I have had these for 3 years now, and they overwinter. Technically, they say they don't overwinter, um, according to our zone. But for the last 3 years, these have overwintered. So, and they are much more sun and heat tolerant. So, if you like Gaberas, uh, and you're a little bit shy of them because of their finickiness, definitely try the Gabera garvinias. So we have these in a pinkish red, we have these in a yellow and a striking orange, but plant them in your garden. Of course, in a basket and container, you can do that too. So, and the last one, we're at 10:58. Last one I want to show you. I really shouldn't show you that. I got one more thing to show you, but this one is just so eye-catching. It almost makes me dizzy. It's like watching a group of zebras, you know, like the cheetahs across the plains. But this is a Petunia, and it's called an ice plant. I just think that's a good name for that. If you want something unusual in your container, it's just a really neat, cool, unusual grass that stays just like this puffy. It always feels like it has that icy coating on it. Last thing, right? 10:59. I do have to show you this. My absolute highest recommendation is when you plant is you use root power. Let's see, root power. And you plant a tree, you plant a shrub, you plant your containers, definitely use root power. Now, this is all organic. It's made up of all organic ingredients. It has all 13 essential nutrients for root growth. We're all about growing roots. The better they grow roots, the better your tops will do, and the better it will handle the hot sun or the cold winters. So highly recommend to use the root power when you plant. So that's all I got, guys. Any other questions?
Great, thank you, John. I lost internet for a minute there. So if we had any questions that came out in while I was trying to figure that out, I apologize. We have just one more question that I see here. And it's a question, do geraniums winter over?
Geraniums won't winter over unless they get your help. So that's something that you can move inside. You don't put them in a nice spot in your house. Put them in a unused cool room. They're going to be sticks and green sticks and a few leaves, and you can bring them out at the beginning of May. It's a tough call. If I had to choose, I wouldn't overwinter. It's not, you don't get the biggest bang for your buck. I think it'd actually be easier to buy new ones, believe it or not, every year. But if you want to do it as a science experiment, something to see what happens, or training it along a trellis or something, certainly go for that. But in general, get new ones every year. Of course, I sell them every year, so you have to realize that bias. But really, for the effort, wintering over them might be just a little bit too much.
Great, thank you. And thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I will send out this recording with a small gap in the middle because, of course, I just lost internet. And if you have any questions, John, can I include your contact information in that email?
Oh, yes, by all means.
Great.
Yes.
So if you sent a question while I was out, I will include John's information in that email so that you can go ahead and get connected with him to answer any questions that we missed. So thank you again so much to John. Really appreciate you taking the time. And thank you all for joining us. Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful Earth Day, and do something for the planet today. Thank you.
Thank you.